And now it's Deborah Kobylt Live and the Little Italy podcast.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today on our Little Italy podcast and Deborah Kobylt Live. I'm thrilled to welcome to our show Alexo Wandael. Oh, Alexo is an incredibly talented Italian film director, producer, photographer who's published 2 books as well from one of his trips cross country. Absolutely magnificent work. So talented. I'm a big fan of your work. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Deborah. It's really an honor to be here with you. And,
and I'd like to thank our friend, Valentina Castellani-Quinn, for introducing us. I really appreciate that. So thank you so much to her.
Thank you, Valentina.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about a project that you've been working on that is absolutely magnificent. Italiani, right? I don't know if I pronounce it right. So why don't you help me out? Why don't you explain it to our audience?
Yes, it's Italiani, written with NY.US.
Okay.
So Italiani is a game word, basically like Italians in Italian, but instead of being written with NY, it's written with instead of being written with NI, it's written with NY, because the project was born in New York. When I lived in New York for 18 years before to move to Los Angeles, 6 years ago. And that is where the project started 10 years ago. So
let's talk about that. And we might even have some pictures from that as well. What is it, and why did you decide to start this? Oh, some of the most beautiful photography. Yeah, so absolutely.
The project started because I wanted to tell about the Italian immigration in this particular time. And so I had the idea to basically do these portraits. Portraits is something that I always love to do, and in black and white, shot on location, and an interview with 6 questions that they are always the same for each person. And so the question they give basically like the bone structure of the project, and it's really like to find out what these new immigrants they are doing in the United States, and why they left Italy, and it's like find out what they do basically, and how they do. And I started the project thanks to the director of Casa Italiana, Zara, and he loved the idea, and so we did the first exhibition there with the Italians in New York in 2014, in September 2014. So in a couple of weeks, this project is 10th birthday. And and then from there, I was lucky because Peroni loved the project, and they sponsored me to do the same concept in Miami, and then in 2015 in Los Angeles. And so we did like the portraits and the exhibition, and then same things in Los Angeles, portraits and exhibition. And then from that point, I started to do it, to keep doing it on my own, the project, and wherever I was going and finding Italians, which are a bit everywhere in the United States, I started to ask and add to this journey. So now we have 167 issues for 177 portraits.
How do you pick the people that you're going to interview? Because and they're always Italian born, right?
Yes, born and raised in Italy, and then they decided to move here to United States, and it's very interesting. Like sometimes, like I find random people with very interesting stories. Sometimes are like reference from people that I take picture, and they told me, oh, this one or that one, or you should take picture because they have very interesting stories. And something that I wanted to tell you is that project is really a 360-degree photography. So it's not based on anything. Like I try to represent all type of jobs, all type of career, all type of age, So it's not focused on anything in particular, beside the fact that, there are people that they made the choice to come here.
Magnificent. But your photography, I interview many, many artists, photographers, writers. To me, it really stands out. There is a certain look to everything you do. Also, you've been a high fashion photographer,
Yes.
and you've worked with some of the top people in the business. We're going to get into that as well. How do you go about your work? Because there's a certain look to your photos that's you've managed to capture the true essence of the person, even fabrics of the clothing. There's just the way you shoot.
Yeah.
What's your process? What's your process?
I think like my background is architecture, so I was an architect for 11 years, and
Yeah,
we learn photography on the last year of architecture in Italy, and I fall in love with photography, and I think like when you're an architect, you develop this eye for composition and for beauty, and but it's all about like abstract beauty. And when I was working as an architect in Berlin for 3 years, like photography became like my medium, or like my really like the way I could express myself. But my love was really for portraits and people, because it was really something that architecture was not able to give me. Instead, like the beauty of a human being is something that I could capture through photography. And that is,
right.
I think, like it's really like what's give the passion for me. Because for me, any portrait is a beauty story. It's something that tells stories through like beauty. And that's why even I did like the portraits for the homeless people in Skid Row. Now I'm doing like a project with jazz musicians. Fashion is basically portraits photography, right? There is a product, there is art that is fashion, but at the end is a portrait. And I always love to create this relationship with the subject. It's like a trust that you have to create between you and the subject. And I think like that is really like one of my biggest passion. And I think it's
That's a Go ahead, please.
it's coming through, as you say. I feel like that portrait is my most powerful, like form of expression.
You brought up the people that on Skid Row. Now that I believe was a film as well that you did. We're going to get into that in a moment. What I
Yeah,
want to do is take it back a little for people. Where
yeah,
are you from in Italy? You said you studied architecture, which once again is art, right? It's all art, whether it's architecture, photography. It's all in a way under the same umbrella because
yeah.
it's looking at something through a lens. But what were you like as a child? Why did you decide to come here to America?
Okay, so I was born in Bolzano, in Alto Adige, South Tyrol, and there is basically like where I was raised. And then like in order to study architecture, I had to move. So I moved to Ferrara, and there for 5 years I studied architecture. And at the beginning, I was thinking architecture was something scientific, but then I discovered that it was very humanistic. And
Yeah.
so, like engineering is super scientific, architecture is much more humanistic, and is really shaping your mind and the way you basically like, process everything. And we have to study art, we have to study architecture, history of art, history of architecture, and I think that is, it's becoming like the recipes to create, like a mind and a person and a creative process that someone is going to adopt. And that I think is what everything, became. I became like this architect that, there are some architects became fashion designer, some other architect become other things. Like, I think like I became an architect that, I became like a photographer with the love for photography, and now a storyteller. So it's
Absolutely. Yeah.
still, I think the soul is the one of an architect. The people that knows me well, they say like, my mind is more an architect than anything else. So
That's so interesting to me. It really is. I love to study the mind of an artist, which of course you are. And when I hear that you're inspired by the architecture, and then from there, everything branches out,
yeah,
your photography and how you see someone through a lens, the storytelling
yeah.
as a filmmaker that you do. Beautiful, award winning filmmaker, I'd like to add,
Thank you.
which is magnificent. Why did you come to America, Alexo?
I came because, first of all, I came to Los Angeles because I did like a summer workshop at SCIARC, Southern California Institute of Architecture, because deconstructivism was my passion. Already like a type of architecture that is very sculptural, is like almost like sculpture, not really building. So I really love that branch of architecture, or like that type of architecture. And then from Los Angeles, a friend of mine asked me like if I wanted to go to New York, for 3 months just to check it out. And I say, why not? I mean, I went to Los Angeles, I'm ready for New York, even if I never had the dream to go to New York, because for me, United States, or I don't know, America was Los Angeles. But then like when I went there, I saw how hard it was and how everything difficult. And so it became like a challenge for me. And
Where in New York, you mean, or
in
where?
New York, yeah,
Yeah.
everything was difficult, and I was young, and I took it as a challenge. It's like
Yeah.
they're saying if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. So I find it like, okay, I have to make it here now. And so through architecture, I find some architectural office. I did an internship, and then from that, it became a working visa. And then I became a New Yorker, basically, because you get into that rhythm, and so that is how I started my adventure in United States. And then in New York, after 8 years, like my dream to become to use more my photography became true, and I started to work as a photographer, fashion photographer, fine art, because I was doing exhibitions, and so I became a photographer. So that was my second life in New York.
What did you enjoy shooting as a fashion photographer? Because once again, the photography that you do, to me, is a step above and very, very unique. Did you enjoy doing fashion photography? And where would people see some of your work? Where has it been published?
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoy, because I think that fashion is an art form. There are some
Yeah, of course.
that they are creating really, really like sculptures or architectures. It's really, really interesting. I love fashion because, as I said, like is portrait, basically portrait.
Hmm.
Like beautiful art that can be worn. Yeah. And so but I worked for different many international magazines when I was in New York, and I had the pleasure to work with amazing models and amazing artists, from stylists to makeup artists, hairstylist. So it is really like the place to be. It was New York, when you want to work with the best, is that. And
Right. And oh, I'm so sorry.
on,
Go ahead.
on my website, wandael.com, you can still see like the project that I did, the magazine I work with. So that is where you can see my fashion work.
And I know that you've been published also in Vogue Italy and just so many places. It is beautiful. So I would encourage people to look it up. But I know that in your life, here's your journey, right? You were
Yeah.
studying architecture in Italy, and then you go to New York, and you're finding your way around. As you said, you're very young. And then you needed something a little deeper. Talk to us about Afghanistan. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I met in 2012. I met this journalist from Switzerland, and she told me like that she was going to Afghanistan and she was going to do reportage. And then I told her like, oh, if you need a photographer, I would love to come. And then she told me like, a lot of photographers, they tell me the same things, like that when I tell them like they want to come, and then she was already in Iraq and stuff like that, and then she said like when I'm knocking at the door, they say they cannot, they are busy, blah blah. And I told her like, listen, you knock on my door and I will come. And so it happened that in May 2012, we basically like left for Afghanistan for a reportage. It was almost 3 weeks reportage, and we did like women that go female jails, basically. So jails for women. And the other one was Afghan women trained to become soldiers. So those were the two reports
Wow.
I worked on, and It was really kind of like a changing experience because, fashion sometimes can be very superficial, like
Yeah.
everything, and architects sometimes can be too deep. And so I find myself that after that experience, I wanted to do something a bit deeper. So then I started my travel on motorcycle throughout United States. I wanted to explore more because when you live in New York, you are basically in New York all the time. It's like a little
That's true.
airport, so it's very difficult to get out of New York. And so I did these motorcycle travels, and at the same time, even inspired by, I was embedded in the Italian army. So I spoke with all these young kids that in a way they left Italy too, to be in a war zone. So, and then when I came back, I decided that I wanted to do something a bit more, I still loving fashion, but I want to do something more meaningful for me. So, and those are like my trips on motorcycle, and Italiani is in the moment that was born. So I wanted to tell stories that they were a bit more deeper, in a way. So yeah, Afghanistan was a turning point for sure in my life and in my career too.
Yeah, it says to me that that was sort of a pivoting point, as you said, to going from more commercial to doing something really right from the heart, right?
Yeah,
Because you were with the people and photographing them, and it's very difficult in Afghanistan, particularly the women and what they go through, and you can tell a story through their eyes. You can feel
yeah,
what they're feeling, their
yeah,
pain, and everything else. And then I can see where that would change a person. And then you come back here and think, I have to go on a journey. So you got on your motorcycle and you
totally.
went across the country. I love this. And
Yes.
then tell me about that magnificent. And you wrote two books about it. I think you have one there. If you could hold
Yeah.
it up for us.
So that is one of them is the first one. It is a photographic book, basically. So it's that my language is the photography. So it's a photographic book, and it's Dear America from New York to San Francisco. And that is
Yeah.
the first one. And it took 1 month to go from New York to San Francisco, but I went, up and down United States. And yeah, that was, for me, it was important, after like Afghanistan, I wanted to see something different. I wanted
Yeah.
to, you go from the female jails in Herat, where I was in Afghanistan, to the set of a fashion photo shoot in New York, and you go basically from two opposite universe. And then I was
Yeah.
like, I want to see different things. I want to see the real America, because I think that inside is the real America, and on the coast is is a different, a different America. So I wanted to see the faces. I want to see the places. I wanted really to absorb like United States and America, and that's why I did those traveling. And I think everyone literally should travel around United States to really, understand the soul of this nation.
That's
And
so well put, because so many people who live here and were born here, they don't do that. They spend their time, as you said, in New York, in Los Angeles, they go to Miami, maybe Chicago, but
yeah,
it's those beautiful places in between, the small towns and the
yeah.
people who live there and the smaller communities that really is the heartland of this country. And it's a beautiful way to do it. You did it on motorcycle. Bravo to you. But these cross country trips are so valuable and so much fun for people. So
And
I'm
I have to
glad you're
say,
encouraging. Go ahead.
yeah, I have to say that people are incredible. When you come from New York, where people are a bit rude, people are a bit, because of the lifestyle, everyone is concentrated in what they have to do, in what sometimes they are considered like a bit rude. But then you go out and there is another life rhythm, and people are so friendly, and
Yeah.
if they can help, they help. They are super smiley. They talk to you. They smile at you. So it's really like refreshing to see, like a different part of the country.
Well, Alexo, maybe it's you. Maybe you show up someplace and you're so lovely with people, and I think they feel that coming from you. That's why everyone is so lovely to you, because you give that back to us. You really do. I mean, the way you look at life, the way you look at people, circumstances, and the way that you show that through your photography and your filmmaking. We're going to get to the filmmaking in a minute.
Yes.
Why do you shoot primarily in black and white? Why is that?
I was born as a photographer with still the film, and it's like the first things you learn is black and white. And when I went to Berlin, I went to a gallery where they were teaching like darkroom. And that for me was so incredible because in the darkroom you could do so much magic, and beside the darkroom was this Zen place. So I remember going like in the darkroom at 11 a.m. and coming out at midnight during the weekend, because then during the week I was working as an architect. But so black and white is really like the things that I could do by myself, because color is a bit more complicated. And I think color, I have my fine art, some of my fine art work are like the opposite, are like explosion of colors and, multi-layerings and cross process where like the density of the color is incredible. But for me, black and white and, is giving like more this timeless, this iconic feeling. The colors are not interfering anymore with what you see. It's just like the shaping and like the sculptural part and the feeling of really like this timeless is present in the black and white. So that's why I really love black and white. And I did even like some of my film are in black and white, and some of my best work is in black and white. Above all, like for example, Italiani is completely a black and white project.
It really adds another layer to the project. When I look at a photo or film in black and white, I take an extra look. You know what I mean? Because
Yes.
I have to really look a little deeper, because I have to use my eyes and understand. And I love the depth of using the black and white. It's beautiful. I know that we have some photographs of some of your work. I want to, if my engineer has that handy, maybe we can put it up, some of the color pieces, and maybe you can describe it as we go along. So I'll wait for him to find that. But in the meantime, I wanted to talk a little bit about your films. You've done two shorts in particular, one long. The longer one is called Tomato Soup in Skid Row. It was inspired by an essay, I believe, in Los Angeles. Talk to me about that. And I want to talk about all of them, and also the award-winning To My Pink Lady.
That was,
but also go ahead.
Yeah, that was interesting because when I moved to Los Angeles, and by mistake I drove through Skid Row, and that was it was a big shock, like a visual shock, because for me it was like being back in a war zone. I had the feeling of being back in Afghanistan.
Interesting.
So, yeah, and I was thinking, how is it possible that something like this is happening? Because in New York, then I became like kind of like I had to study a lot about homelessness. In New York, there are more homeless than in Los Angeles. People don't know that, but there are more facilities, and so you see them less around. Here, you see them more around. They are more out. And in Skid Row is the major concentration of homeless people in Los Angeles. So when you pass through those streets, it's really like hurting. It's hurting, and it's like, how is it possible that something like this in United States, the greatest country in the world, like something like this can happen? So like again, like I decided to go with my white paper, and I wanted to take portraits. I was inspired. Okay, one of my maestri is in photography is Richard Avedon. And I loved his portraiture, because I think like he was another, genius of portrait. He was really capturing the soul of people. And I love that, concept of white, that white space that, it's basically like make you concentrate just on the person, on the eyes, on the faces. And so I decided like to go to Skid Row with this white paper, which I attach it to a wall, and then I start to walk there and ask, to take portraits. And that was incredible because it was like the human factor and the human experience was incredible, because sometimes when you pass with a car and you just see them as a landscape, you forget that these people are human beings, right? And when
Absolutely.
you are talking to them, and they are funny and they tell you stories, and you realize that it's just like us, like me, you, anyone. So it was really an incredible experience, and that is what made me, like, I create this essay of black and white portraits of homeless people.
Yeah.
And that was what is inspired me, like, because talking to them, like, I heard like so many incredible stories that I wanted to make a movie where, like, you can hear them telling their stories. And that is basically what is a Tomato Soup in Skid Row. It's basically like homeless people telling to a real actor how they became homeless. So it's really like powerful. I think it want to change a bit the perspective of how people become homeless in the United States. There is a, learning and working and, meeting people that they work with homeless, they shed light on about homelessness in the United States. And there is a false misrepresentation or a false idea about how people become homeless in the United States. And I was part of the same belief that in order to become homeless in the United States, you have to have either a drug addiction problem or mental health problem. But those factors are only like 30% the reason of why people become homeless in the United States. So that means 70% of the homeless population in the United States become homeless for other reasons than that. And is poverty, lack of affordable housing, the minimum wage is too low. There are a lot of people that are homeless, but they are working. And, it's things that people, they don't know about it. So that is what Tomato Soup in Skid Row is about.
Yeah, magnificent. And then on the entire opposite end, you've got Maye Musk, right? That you did a very short film about Maye Musk. Can you tell us, people are always so curious about anybody Musk, whether it's Elon or his mother, Maye. She's quite interesting. She's been a fashion model as well. Tell us about that project.
I'm in fact, like, I met Maye in New York when she was a fashion model, and so we were friends from New York, and so she came out like with this book. It's her autobiography. It's called "A Woman Makes a Plan," and is telling in the book like the story of her life, basically, which is very interesting because it's telling a lot of detail and experience that she had. And I remember that here in Los Angeles, I shot her for a Vanity Fair. And so we decided to do this short film where she's reading like parts of this book that she wrote. And so it came like a very kind of surreal piece, another black and white, very elegant, and where we can hear her, reading parts from her book. And I think it became like a little really nice piece.
It's lovely. And, there's a lot of misconceptions about her. She didn't always have money. And, I believe she was a single mom of 3 children, right?
Yes.
And she's actually someone that I would love to interview because her story is one of resilience. She just kept going.
Totally.
And she made sure that each of her children are different, right? We know that. And she made sure that each one was able to follow their own path. And I really think she's an extraordinary woman and is an extraordinary mom and beautiful. So I look forward to see, that's a great piece to watch as well. But her story is incredibly interesting.
Yeah,
and then,
her story is great, and she was an incredible mom. And I think like you can feel it because all the 3 children, they love her, and it's you can feel that like she gave so much, sacrifice, and it's really like incredible. Like her story, it's very interesting.
Yeah. What inspires you? I guess it just has to, you see it, it inspires you, and you decide, I have to do something on this. And by the way, that also includes your other short film, award-winning film, To My Pink Lady, which I know is very personal. It's about a friend who died of leukemia.
That was
And,
the first,
go ahead.
that was the first one, and that was is going to be always my favorite one, because it was the one that gave me really like the force to do it. To do your first short film is really like a big and long journey, and sometimes it's really making difference from wanting to do it and doing it is completely like different. And I work in photography. I did ad campaign, and I know how it's like. But doing like even a short film, it's completely like another ball game. And so I have here. This is basically like the inspiration for my first film, which is called To My Pink Lady. But my pink chemo is basically this blog that this friend of mine, Christina, wrote while she was in the hospital in Milano. She was a lawyer, and the blog is incredible. She's writing such a beautiful entries. They are so deep, and so that gave me the power and the force to do, to push and do it, and manage to do my first short film. And I'm really proud, because I'm sure that wherever she is, in which energy form, or in which part of the universe, she felt it.
Yeah, and she inspired you. But to me, that motorcycle of yours is like a metaphor. You keep going. The journey keeps going, and you bring friends along with you, like your friend Christina, and others, and you include them in your work. I find that very interesting.
Yeah.
Where do you see? I know that. Where do you see yourself next? Like, where do you see yourself? And if we can, I don't know if my engineer is there. I'd really like to put up some of the photos that we have of some of your work, if it's available. So as we're talking, hopefully we can get that available.
Deborah, it's funny because you know that since I'm here in Los Angeles, I have that motorcycle, which her name is Arcadia, and since I have that motorcycle since 2010, and since I'm in Los Angeles, I did already two motorcycle accidents, and the motorcycle was destroyed in the front, but both time I managed to find the parts and rebuild her. And my father is always, like even after the second accident, which was a bit more powerful than the first, my father told me, "Oh, finally you are going to buy an SUV, like a very safe car." And I told her, no, it's like I'm going to invest and bring her back. And so now she's back again, and I'm riding every day again. And so that motorcycle is really like part of me, and like my idea of keep going and keep doing it.
So what is your next? So sorry, I interrupted you. What is your next project? Are you continuing with what you're doing? Photographing people. So tell us about it. I know that you have different phases. And again, if Tony, my engineer, can hear us, I want to put up some photos of your work.
Okay, so,
if he can.
As always, I'm like multitasking.
Oh, look. Wait, hold on. Look, he's found them. As he puts them up, just very briefly describe. What are you looking at here?
This is more my fine art work, where I work with layering images. So this is, for example, a project I call Skins. And this is about like, layering images of a model, which I shot like many years ago with different paintings. And it's giving like almost like it's becoming like a new skin for her.
That is so cool. We'll just keep going if he puts some of them up
beautiful there. Because this is another like it's called Maya's Veils, and it's basically like based on another project that I did. It's one of my in the fine art. I love veils. And I did a lot of exhibition of Veils project, but they were more like on black background. And then I spoke with the gallerist, and she told me like, oh, you know what? It could be interesting if you start to inject more colors. And then I was thinking, okay, I was home because I had the surgery on my knee after my motorcycle accident. And they say,
Yeah.
what? Let me get back that project and trying to do, different layers with colors. And so I started to play around, and it became really interesting. And so, for example, here I have like a little test that I'm working on. So, it's like they are very, very colorful image. Each image is created by around 40 layers. And
Wow.
yeah, the beauty is like that anytime I change something in the layers, the image change drastically. And it giving me a lot of variation. So it's like really like the master, when they were painting, they had like layers. So for me, it's almost like, like there are a lot of painters that they try to paint as a photography. And for me, it's the opposite. I'm trying to, create my photography almost like they become paintings, right?
Yeah, absolutely magnificent. Wow, Alexo, that is just beautiful. How you captured her there. She's almost angelic. She's so beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. I like that part. This project is a bit between Renaissance and pop art. So it's, like two of my favorite art movement. And so you can see them, they are a bit there, like both. And yeah, so this is the Maya's Veil. It's a new project that I'm working on, and that is in the fine art,
in the final stage. So you're working on that. You're continuing on your work with
Italiani is an ongoing project, and my dream will be to go from Italiani.us to, and I already bought the domain, to Italiani.world. And yeah, so like finding the right sponsor or the right partner will be interesting for me to bring the same concept to basically like other nation in the world, because I'm sure there are Italians everywhere, and that would be nice. For example, I know there is an Italian in Greenland, and it's actually from my city, from Bolzano. So that would be for me spectacular to have. But I know there are like, Italians in Africa, South America, Asia, and that would be nice to, bring the project from, because the project went from New York to the United States, and now from United States to the world. I think it's like a good,
it's the next step. It flows. The way your entire life's work seems to flow, but you just burst with such imagination and creativity. It's really incredible. I mean, just to get inside the mind of an artist like you is a real honor. So, gosh, I'm so thrilled to have spoken to you. Anything else you'd like to tell our audience just about being an artist? Go ahead. Like even about being an artist and following your passion, because a lot of times people won't do that. They don't understand, but there's so much bursting inside, and you're somebody who's embraced it. Would you like to talk about that a little bit? And what else would you like to tell our audience before we let you go?
Well, I'm working on another film too. It's a long feature. It's called Black Sun. It's about it's a Second World War movie, but with fantasy, sci-fi fantasy twist, which I think is interesting. It's almost the Pan's Labyrinth type of film, and I think has a lot of potential. It's could be really incredible, and it's about children, and so. That there is a creature, so that is a movie that I really like, and I'm working on with the screenplay writer. But then, yes, I think being an artist, even if I don't call myself an artist, but I think I'm a creative person, and I love to work on different. So I love Italiani, I love my fine art, I love film, I love portraits, and I think like. Even like from Christina, you have to learn something in life that everyone has an expiration date, and it's a one-way trip. So I think like you have to embrace and do really what is your call. and can be very difficult. But is something that when you are at the end of your life, you cannot have regrets, because then it's too late. So sometimes like I could have been an architect for the rest of my life and doing really well, but then I decided to follow my passion, and I'm still following my passions, going up and down like every artist and every creative, but still like, following my code.
Magnificent. Alexo, thank you so much for
Deborah,
joining
it
us.
was such a pleasure, and thank you so much for, being interested in my work.
It's beautiful. How can people get in touch with you, and how can they look you up?
Through my websites, through my Instagram, Alexo Wandael, and Italiani.us, Wandael.com. For my director, you can see my music video, my commercial on alexovandael.com. So there are different ways you can reach, basically.
Yeah, wonderful. In fact, you sent me one of those, I think last night or the night before, one of your videos. It was just spectacular and beautiful, right? So that was magnificent too.
That was a
Just
dream.
What's that?
That was a dream that I had. That I was thinking about this interview, and I dreamed that I was talking with you about that video. So that's how I think, like, oh, it's funny, I'm going to send to her. It was that music video for Katie Tunstall. And that was like, super black and white, super, fashion and veils. And there are all a bit, my world is in that, video. Is called The River, and you can find it on YouTube. And so I thought it was funny, because a lot of things,
it was,
you have to believe in dreams a lot of time, anytime. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that you sent that to me. It made me smile, and it was beautiful as well. So thank you. And everybody, you can find our interview with Alexo Wandael here on YouTube, Facebook. Then we will promote this on Instagram with little promos. And then, of course, as an audio version, we're on iHeartRadio, Amazon, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. You can look us up, Little Italy Podcast, and Deborah Kobylt live. So you'll find it audio and video, our conversation with Alexo. Alexo, thank you for joining us. And thank you to our entire audience for joining us. And we'll see you next time.